Well, joining me now live to discuss the day's top stories is Nationals leader David Littleproud. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got to start, of course, with the Matildas. What an incredible campaign. It's been an amazing few weeks, not just for the team, but also for Australia. Do you think we're seeing a bit of a Matildas effect here? Have the squad changed women's codes? Are people standing up and taking notice of women's sport now?
Yeah, I think it has. The last month's proven that, and I think it doesn't take away from what the Diamonds have been able to do. I think 12 World Cups. Our international cricketers have won the last couple of World Cups. I think what this did was just have such a game of soccer that is worldwide on our shores, and to be the centre of attention globally here in Australia. And our team, who was ranked around 12th in the world before they came into it a month ago, and now finished 4th, just goes to show that women's sport in this country had matured, but this was about highlighting it to the extent that the Australian population understood the gravity of the improvement in women's sport, and how proud we are of this team, this Matildas team, but all other women's sports out there that have actually been leading the world and really been showing men up for some time. So I think this event just highlighted, and the way the Matildas handled themselves just also personified the professionalism, but also their actual values and principles of how they conduct themselves. And there's never any scandal around them. They just get on with their job, and the fact that they're not getting the big pay packets that some of their male counterparts are getting is a real reflection, not just for governments, but I think for governing bodies as well. This is a real product now, and it's going to be looked at by eyeballs on TV, and not just TV rights, but sponsorships. And I think administrators need to make sure not only is it responsibility of the government to invest in sport, but it's also them to make sure that they're sharing some of that investment into the continuing to grow women's sport and that product that is becoming what is a world-class spectacle.
Well, the Prime Minister announced $200 million over the weekend for women's sport. Does that go far enough in your view?
Well, it's $50 million short of what we'd announced, $250 million to go into grassroots. And this is what we've got to appreciate is everyone has a role to play in this. And I think federal governments have a role in making sure that grassroots comes through, and where sports administrators can use commercial means to actually socialise and share some of not only the men's engagement and benefits across into developing the women's product, but at a federal level, I think we have a responsibility to make sure that those changing rooms, that we leave a legacy. I mean, Anthony Albanese was all about giving a holiday. It's pretty easy to call for a holiday when someone else is paying for it. And I took the unpopular position to say straight up that we don't support that. We want to leave a legacy, and the Nationals and the Liberals want to leave a legacy, a long legacy, that makes sure that girls don't have to get changed between two cars and with doors open, so they have the privacy to get changed for a game of touch football or soccer or cricket. We need to make sure we make those significant investments. That's the grassroots investment, as well as helping mums and dads, particularly in regional and remote areas where there is plenty of talent out there. But you just got to understand, mums and dads out there make huge financial sacrifices in just trying to get them to be able to compete at a national level in travelling and accommodation, and I think that's where the practical measures need to be. We welcome what the government's done. It was all in reaction to the fact that they were going down the popular route of a holiday, forgetting about the reality is that we need to leave a legacy of what the Matildas and build on that legacy. We are the custodians of that, and it's important that we build on what the Matildas and the Diamonds and the cricketers have done. So this is the opportunity, and I think it's a start, but unfortunately we can continue to keep moving forward on this, and I'd like to see them match us to that $250 million.
All right, let's move on to the rest of the day's news. The Business Council of Australia have come out today. They want to raise the GST rate, saying that without change, the nation will fall behind economically. Would you back this?
Well, I think there needs to be a broader, holistic conversation about taxation. The Nationals have always supported looking and reforming taxation where it makes sense. And for us in the regions, we believe passionately in zonal taxation, in economic zones, whereby you can help to create investment and actually attract investment away from big capital cities to be able to get it into some of the regions where there is capacity. And that's about making sure you have a modern taxation system that allows and increases the brackets so that basically they don't pay as much tax in those areas where you'll incentivise that investment. And I think also we made some pretty big changes, and I think while the BCA represents the big end of town, it's also important to understand that the instant asset write-off that we put in place was one of the best tax breaks that we could give anybody, any business out there, because what it did was it was an investment back in their business where they could go and buy a piece of equipment or invest back in their business to expand, and they got a tax concession from it. But what it did was it continued to stimulate the economy because it incentivised them to spend up to $250,000 putting it into new equipment, improving productivity and efficiency, and that meant that it flowed back in through the economy as well. And I think we need to look at this holistically. Unfortunately, the Albanese government has cut that back to $20,000, which you can't even buy a ute for these days. So I think we're up for the conversation pragmatically, but making sure also that there's a significant role for the regions to play, and I think the state should play in that as well, in making sure that we look at draconian taxes like payroll tax, which is a tax on employment. And if you want to improve productivity and you want to improve investment by the corporate sector and private sector, then you have to incentivise them, and that's where the Nationals are up for that conversation, and we're prepared to have that, pragmatically making sure that that opportunity of wealth is spread right across the country, not just in the big corporates that the BCA represent.
All right. On another matter, new research has found Australia will lose its AAA credit rating by the end of the decade if climate change is not slowed. It could cost Australia hundreds of millions of dollars in the long run. Has Australia been too slow to act?
No, we haven't. We've been sensible. We've lived up to all our international commitments, whether that be Kyoto, whether that be Paris, and we have lived up and we will live up to our international commitment by 2050. But there is no linear pathway to that net zero by 2050. But the advantage that Australia has is the sovereignty of all its resources. And this is why we're saying that unfortunately this government has accelerated that pathway to net zero from 2050 to 2030 effectively by saying they want to get to 82% renewables by 2030. That's putting a significant pressure on our energy system and your energy bills, and it's not achievable. So what we're saying is let's pause, let's plan, and when we say let's pause, we don't have to pause for years. We can actually work this out now and look at the emerging technology as well. And the Nationals led the debate for some years now on nuclear energy, and I've got to say the coalition never went down that path when we were in government because the Liberals couldn't get themselves to reconcile it. Now Peter Dutton's shown the courage to come with the Nationals on this. We think we should explore that. That's zero emissions technology that can also mean that we get away from the expense of putting in 28,000 kilometres of new transmission lines, knocking down remnant vegetation, and also taking away our food security by putting solar panels and wind turbines and transmission lines across it, when we can complement renewables, make them work with the new technology of nuclear, as well as carbon capture storage for our gas and coal-fired power stations as well. This is where the opportunity sits with Australia. It shouldn't cost us. But if you pull the wrong levers and you accelerate it too quick without allowing industry the time and sending the right signals, then invariably it costs us more, and that's what you're seeing in your energy bill today is because of the ideology not meeting the practical reality of what's being bled out of people's wallets at the moment.